Good morning. We are live from River Valley Room.
Is sound still on? I've lost sound.
Good morning. Welcome to the May 2nd, 2023 Urban Planning Committee meeting. I'm delighted to call us to order at 9:31 this morning, and I'll start with a quick roll call of my fellow committee members. Councillor Tang.
Good morning.
Councillor Rutherford.
Morning.
And Councillor Cartmel.
Good morning.
I see that we are also joined by some of our colleagues online. Councillor Knack.
Good morning.
Councillor Salvador.
Good morning.
Councillor Wright.
Good morning.
Councillor Principe.
Good morning.
And I believe those are all of the council members that are here with us today. I'd like to start us off with a moment to center ourselves and remind us of where we are located. From time immemorial, diverse Indigenous nations have stewarded these lands, including the Nahiwak, the Nehewiniwak, Nakota Iska, Dene Salina, and Nitsitsapi. Many more First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples have gathered, traded, and celebrated on this land. This place also forms part of the Métis homeland, is within Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 4. The signing of Treaty Number 6 in 1886-87 created a foundation of good relations, welcoming peoples to this area from around the world. Today, Edmonton carries on this tradition of welcoming peoples from many nations as we continue to work to live into the spirit and intent of treaty. We'll move now to the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Tang.
I move that the May 2nd, 2023 Urban Planning Committee meeting agenda be adopted with the following changes. The addition of 7.2, tree management for the William Horlock Park Rehabilitation Project, and the postponement of 7.5, overview of city hydrogen activities to June 1st, 2023.
Thank you. Please vote.
Yes, for me.
Yes, for me.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that's carried. And for the approval of the minutes, Councillor Tang.
I move that we approve the minutes from April 12th, 2023 Urban Planning Committee meeting and the April 19th non-regular Urban Planning Committee.
Thank you. Please, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, please vote. Oh, I'm a yes.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that's carried. Thank you. I will go now for protocol items. I believe, Councillor Tang, you have one for us.
Yes, I do. Good morning, everyone. Asian Heritage Month has officially begun yesterday, May 1st, and I would like to recognize the contributions and achievements of Edmontonians of East, South, Western, Central, and Southeast Asian heritage. The people of these diverse, vibrant, and growing communities have contributed to every aspect of life in our city, from arts and culture to science and sport to business and government. And the languages, ethnicities, and cultures enrich our city. And I myself am proud to be one of the first Chinese Canadian city councillors. And to celebrate and recognize the occasion, I am wearing the Asian Heritage Month shirt as part of the #ProudlyAsian campaign led by local organizers, creatives here in Edmonton, with proceeds going towards the Action Chinese Canadian Together Foundation. And the design itself, it actually incorporates many national flowers from East Asian and Southeast Asian countries. And this design is unique to this occasion. Of course, we know that diversity is one of Edmonton's greatest strengths, and we strive to ensure that all feel welcomed and included in our city. But we must also do our part to listen and to learn from those with different backgrounds than our own, to continue building solidarity and connection across cultures and communities. And I'd like to encourage my colleagues and all Edmontonians to take some time this month to learn more about the history of Asian Canadians. Some opportunities here in Edmonton include the Untouchable Chinatown Photography Exhibit in Chinatown, and the Mercantile Mobility Chinese Merchants in Western Canada exhibit at the University of Alberta. More information can be found at asianheritagemonth.ca on these and other activities. And I'd like to thank the many community members that are making these opportunities to share Asian culture and heritage a possibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Tang. Lots to look forward to this month. I'll now move for selection of items for debate. If my colleagues would like to sign up or just wave at me. Councillor Tang?
Certainly the ones that are request to speak, 7.1, 7.2, and 7.5.
I think we've postponed.
Oh, that's right,
7.5.
so yes.
Okay,
So that will be for next time.
Great, 7.1, 7.2. Not seeing any other, oh, yeah, Councillor Rutherford.
I'm going to select 7.4 for some questions on Calder.
Great. Thank you so much. We will vote on reports not selected for debate. So that's 7.3. I'll move bylaw 20428, semi-annual amendments to speed zone, bylaw 6894 be sent with recommendation of approval to council. Great. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that's carried. Madam Clerk, can you read back what we've done this morning?
Thank you, Chair Stevenson. This morning, Urban Planning Committee has passed the recommendation of the following report without debate. Item 7.3, Bylaw 20428, Semi-Annual Amendments to Speed Zones, Bylaw 6894.
Excellent, thank you. Now we'll go to requests to speak. Councillor Tang.
Okay, great. I move that Urban Planning Committee hear from the following speakers in panels when appropriate. For item 7.1, City Plan New Urban Trees, Marlena Wyman, remote. Dale Ladouceur, in person. Raquel Farreau, remote. Eric Gormley, in person. Sherry Heschuk, remote. Monica Grosmacher, remote. Christine Kowalczyk, Edmonton River Valley Conservation Coalition, remote. Jan Harstaff, Park Allen, in person. Wendy Antoniak, in person. Elaine Solas, in person. And for 7.2, tree management for the William Horlat Park Rehabilitation Project, Dale Ladouceur, in person. Raquel Farreau, remote. Sherry Heschuk, remote. And Christine Kowalczyk, remote.
Thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that's carried. I see no requests for time specific on the agenda. Moving now to councillor inquiries. Councillor Cartmel.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. I have the following inquiry. Can administration provide a report to committee listing all social service agencies present in the Boyle Street, Macaulay, and Central McDougall neighborhoods, the services each agency provides to support homeless persons, the number of clients served, and the level of financial support received from the City of Edmonton?
Thank you. Any others? Seeing none, we will go into our first item. So over to administration for presentation on 7.1, and then we'll go to our public speakers.
Good morning, Madam Chairperson, committee members, members of council. We're here this morning to provide response to two motions in regards to city plan and urban trees. So this morning we'll be providing an update in regards to the city plan and the goal of planting 2 million new urban trees. And we'll also be providing an update on our naturalization program, including the engagement work that's been undertaken, as well as the work on the implementation going forward. With me this morning is Craig McEwen, our Branch Manager of Parks and Road Services, as well as Mark Beer, our Director of Infrastructure Operations, for the presentation. We'll also be joined for questions by Travis Kennedy and Nicole Fraser from the branch, as well as a number of cross-departmental representatives joining us virtually later this morning. I'll now pass things over to Mark, who will walk you through the details of the presentation.
Good morning, committee members. Increasing Edmonton's urban tree canopy contributes to climate resilience for all Edmontonians by improving air quality, mitigating flood risks, increasing pollinator habitat, capturing carbon, and reducing heat in urban locations that experience higher temperatures, known as the heat island effect. The city owns and maintains over 10,000 hectares of parks and open spaces, which includes nearly 400,000 boulevard and open space trees, 2,500 hectares of natural area tree stands, and 1,000 hectares of naturalized areas throughout the city, including the River Valley. These natural assets are valued at $2.7 billion. And for a point of reference, 1 hectare is slightly larger than the turf within Commonwealth Stadium. Some of the urban forestry highlights from 2022 include 89,000 tree and shrub seedlings that were planted through the Root for Trees naturalization programs. Nearly 11,000 trees were planted as part of open space and boulevard maintained tree renewal and the tree canopy expansion, and 1,400 trees were replaced as part of ongoing maintenance of city inventory. The City of Edmonton has 2 key plans for growing Edmonton's urban tree canopy. The first is the target within the city plan's Big City Move, Greener as We Grow, is to plant 2 million new urban trees by the time the population reaches 2 million people. Second, the Urban Forest Asset Management Plan targets 20% urban forest canopy cover by 2071. Our current urban canopy is approximately 13%. Modeling suggests that in order to meet the 20% urban forest canopy target by 2071, 2 million net new urban trees would need to be planted by 2030. This is in addition to the current initiatives to grow and maintain the urban forest canopy on public and private property. The city's on track to achieve these objectives and is currently focused on 2 projects that will guide planting from now until 2030. The first is capital planning for Greener as We Grow, and the second is the creation of a Naturalization, Restoration, and Reclamation Plan, the NRRP. Administration predicts that through current planting initiatives, which includes naturalization, the city will reach the city plan goal of planting 2 million new urban trees by 2030. In 2023, our targets for tree planting include 900 net new boulevard and open space trees, 5,500 replacement boulevard and open space trees, and over 200,000 trees and shrubs planted through naturalization. Additional initiatives for urban tree canopy growth and preservation on public and private land are being explored, with some examples including, for public land, review of the city design and construction standards for opportunities to increase space for trees and tree planting requirements. For private land, continue to develop programs to promote, encourage, and incentivize tree preservation and planting. Work with other organizations to expand programs focused on low-impact development and tree planting on private property, including residential, commercial, and industrial. And lastly, mapping and retaining city land holdings that are of high ecological benefit and identify opportunities for the city to purchase high-value tree stands. So a little bit of background on naturalization. Naturalization is an ecologically based approach to landscape management. It is intended to transform highly maintained land and achieve a more naturally functioning plant community. It has environmental, economic, social, and quality of life benefits for Edmontonians. Naturalization in Edmonton has been occurring for over 100 years. During settlement, large areas were deforested to provide room for agriculture, roadway construction, and storage of garbage. Much of the river valley that we now refer to as natural has actually been reforested to its current state. In 1994, the Naturalization Master Plan was published. The city established programs along the way, such as Root for Trees, which allow residents to participate in planting trees and shrubs in naturalized areas. We also have partnered with various academia on research projects over the last 10 years. And since 2020, there has been focused work on aligning the city plan, the Urban Forest Asset Management Plan, and related naturalization and tree planting. Naturalization is an integral part of the city's tree planting strategies because naturalized areas allow for a greater number and variety of trees to be planted compared to boulevards and other open spaces. It also aligns with the principles and goals of the city plan, Greener as We Grow, Connect Edmonton, and the Climate Change Adaptation and Resilience Strategy. The creation of the new Naturalization, Restoration, and Reclamation Plan and identifying naturalization planting locations through Greener as We Grow project is an important part of meeting the city plan of planting 2 million new trees. Some engagement for naturalization and tree planting is taking place on 2 levels. First, citywide engagement. This has been conducted at a higher level through several in-person and online engagement activities that has informed the development of city policies, plans, and bylaws. And second, community level engagement, where engagement, communications, and education are used to gather feedback on the implementation of projects, increasing local awareness and understanding, and informing the public about the city's initiatives. Notably, results from citywide engagement show that residents consistently express support for the preservation of trees, maintaining existing urban tree canopies, naturalization in locations such as parks, along roadways, and around stormwater management facilities, and planting more trees for a greener Edmonton. Administration is also about to launch Phase 2 engagement to gather input on the where and the how for the capital planning for Greener as We Grow project and to inform the new Naturalization, Restoration, and Reclamation Plan. So in closing, administration predicts that through current initiatives, we will reach the city plan goal of planting 2 million new urban trees by 2030. We'll continue to work on developing new programs, projects, and improvements to enhance tree planting and naturalization, as well as focusing on retention and conservation of high-value natural assets on public and private property. If Edmonton continues to invest in tree canopy growth, maintenance, renewal, and replacement, we expect Edmonton's urban forest canopy will continue to grow. This will only be achieved through continued collaboration across departments, with external partners, and with residents, working together on a climate-resilient future. Thank you, and we'll take questions, I guess, after questions to speakers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'll now invite our public speakers who are here in person to okay, with a new speaker as well. So as I read out your name, if you're here in person, you can come and take a seat in the panel. We'll hear from you all as a panel. So Marlena Wyman, Dale Ladouceur, Raquel Farreau, Eric Gormley, Sherry Heschuk, Monica Grusmacher, Christine Kwalchuk. Come on up. As I'm calling your names. Jan Hardstaff, Wendy Antoniak, and Elaine Solis.
Maybe Councillor Stevenson, if I can move that we approve Bruce Danzig to speak as well.
Great, thank you. We will call the vote on adding a new speaker if our clerk's team is ready for that. But we can also wait a moment. Yeah, are we good to go? Okay, so we'll vote on that, please, adding a speaker. We're just waiting to vote on adding a speaker.
It's ready for you. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that's carried. Thank you. So just a quick note to our speakers. Sorry, just have your attention for a moment. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today, those in person and those online. We'll be hearing from you in panels today, so that means each of you will speak for 5 minutes, one after another. We'll just go through the order that we had on our approved speakers list. We'll have a timer running here in chambers, so you can watch the lights there. Green, it will turn yellow in your last minute, and then red. I'd just like to note that we have quite a few speakers, and we are adjourning at noon today, so I will be quite tight on time, just to let everyone know. Once you've had a chance to present, please don't go anywhere. At the end of your panel, members of committee and other council colleagues have the opportunity to ask you questions. And just a reminder, if you're participating virtually, to please stay muted when it is not your turn to speak. And if you have any challenges, you can email city.clerk@edmonton.ca. In the event of emergency, for those who are joining us today, please follow the clerk's direction to evacuate, and city staff will direct you to the muster zone. And so with that, I will turn to Marlena Wyman for our first presentation.
Yes, hello. Is it possible to have my PowerPoint presentation put up?
Yeah, if that has been provided to the team. Did you?
It hasn't. No, it hasn't. Sorry, I missed that.
Oh.
That's all right. I will just speak to
Okay.
the...
Okay, thank you.
All right. So good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm an artist and past historian laureate for the city. And this, firstly, what I'd like to say is that I am disappointed that the bylaw for tree preservation on private property has been downgraded and subsumed into a new urban trees bylaw. I spoke to the committee last year, and it was to be discussed again this year, but I feel it's basically been dismissed in this report. The new urban trees report states all of the highly valuable assets that trees provide, which I totally agree with. And yet the underwhelming support given to the retention of mature trees indicates a lack of that commitment. I think there's a great risk of being soothed by the feel-good trendiness of we are planting millions of new trees. But those new trees won't reach their true useful potential for decades, and many won't survive along the way. Of course, planting new trees is important, and I participate in the Root for Trees program. But the solution that we need today already exists right now in our mature trees and their immense value toward reaching climate change goals, along with all the multitudes of other benefits of mature trees. Newer often tends to seem better, even when it isn't. I live in Park Allen, a mature neighborhood of modest houses, which are being demolished and replaced with huge single-family houses that totally denude the lots of mature trees. My house is 720 square feet, which allows for a treat yard that not only contributes to my family's benefit, but also to the benefit of the city. I also have vegetable and flower gardens, and densification is possible with the construction of a garden suite in the back without the destruction of any of those trees. There is a property across the alley from me where both the house and trees have been recently demolished for the construction of yet another new large single-family house. These huge infill houses have not contributed to densification, nor to affordable housing, nor reaching climate change goals, or the livability and beauty of the city. 2 lots across from me, across my backyard, and across my neighbor's backyard is a huge new house that completely blocks all of the sun from her yard. And there is a detached 3-car garage behind this new house, and that detached 3-car garage is the same square footage as my house. The new urban trees report seems to indicate that it would not be easy to administer a private tree protection bylaw, but we should not be considering important decisions on the basis of whether or not they are easy to implement. Failing, for example, is easy. And in what I had a slide of the new black, and black seems to be the new house color from the front. And if any of you are familiar with the movie Despicable Me, the house from that portrays what the villain's house would look like, this is actually very similar. And the trees that were on that property, there were many mature trees that all have been taken down. And I have spoken to some of the developers in my neighborhood, asking about their reasoning for the removal of trees and the amount of space that the houses take up. They have replied that the city bylaws allow it. And that indicates that strong and enforced bylaws do make a difference, and just educating, encouraging, incentivizing, and reviewing is simply not enough. On a brighter note, I would like to refer you to a series of videos by The Aesthetic City. And if you look up The Aesthetic City online, there is a website as well as a series of videos. And this is an initiative by Dutch urban planner Ruben Hansen. Edmonton's new urban trees report indicates that a private tree preservation bylaw would disincentivize residential density development. And The Aesthetic City demonstrates the opposite. One video that can also be found on YouTube is titled "This Town Did the Impossible," and it's about Le Plessis-Robinson, a town near Paris that had been a garden city, but had been overtaken by grim, stark architecture in both residential and business sectors. And the transformation back to a vital community from social problems and crime, with an emphasis on beautified densification, was made possible by brilliant architects and planners, one steadfast mayor who had backing from council and from administration, and collaboration with ecologists. As the narrator of the video says, the plan was not the result of just a couple of profit-hungry developers. Beauty does matter. Beauty and human dignity go hand in hand, and that is something that everyone deserves. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll go now to Mr. Ladoucelle. Oh, Ms., I apologize, Dale.
No, that's all fine. I'm Dale Ladouceur, a musician and artisan in the city, and I definitely had a very good and organized talk planned, but then Gordon Lightfoot had to die, and it totally destroyed my night. Quoting him, "The red pines will bow their heads, the rivers and the watersheds will carry us along." I understand the value of and the difference between value and worth. And I know that we had to put a monetary value on the trees in this city, but I really do believe that the 2071 50-year plan is not taking into consideration the fact that we are dealing with global climate change, ozone depletion, and the fact that young seedlings are really struggling to take hold. So we really can't equate the fact if we cut down 1,000 mature trees, we can plant like 1,000 or 2,000 or 1,800 seedlings, and it will take care of it, because we're certainly in a different ballgame now. Question to council regarding the fact that if you have taken a trip over the last 5 years on any of Alberta's highways, don't know whether you noticed, but there is not a whole lot of bug guts on the windshields anymore because insect collapse is happening. National Geo put out a big cover story on it, and you know from being intelligent human beings that the fact that insects are disappearing is also impacting everything else in our little world. I really do believe that, I mean, I agree with you, there is an irreplaceable asset. They are irreplaceable, but the fact that Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, and Vancouver all have protection for private trees, it disproves that this disincentivizes infill. We really have to rethink this, that cutting down a mature tree is so much of a loss. And that's all I'm seeming to see nowadays. There's other. You only have to look at Winston Churchill Square. It was once a beautiful, green, lots of big, beautiful trees, and now it's a mini urban heat dome. I know that LRT expansion had to happen, but we're looking at from 124th Street to 142nd Street, all along 104th Ave. We're looking at cutting down, we're looking at overall a really big loss in regards to our trees. And we won't right now talk about Horlack, but we must protect our private trees because they give so much to carbon sequestering and there's just so, I mean, I don't have to waste your time because you understand the value of mature trees, and it's absolutely vital that we rethink the strategy of planting young trees because there will be a gap. There will be a gap in what the environmental pluses of that mature trees do. When we lose those mature trees, please forgive me for being a little erratic here, but when we lose mature trees and we think that we can just replace them with young trees, that is something that we have to rethink because it's just not going to work. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Next is Raquel Furrow.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. I was feeling a bit bummed signing on this morning, but now listening to Dale Lattiser and Marlene Weinman, I feel better again. It's so nice to listen to important artists speak about trees. I read the reports and they are what bummed me out. I didn't find a lot of meat in them, and that's kind of what I want to speak to. Like it was, as Marlena says, dismissive of the private tree bylaw. Like it kind of even used the pejorative word of, in theory, the private tree bylaw could protect trees. And yet the whole report really felt very theoretical. There weren't a lot of metrics to tell us that we're even headed in the right direction. And when you walk around, you just see everything tells us that we're going in the wrong direction. Like in Riverdale, man, the trees are getting cut at an unbelievable rate. Like there've been properties completely cleared of every tree before there's even, and then, presumably for a development proposal, but then the land has been flipped and sold and all the trees are gone. So yeah, are we headed in the right direction? Does council really have the metrics they need to know whether administration needs to be micromanaged or not? I say they do need to be. Like, we need a better metric, because when I looked at the LiDAR, like I don't understand. What I would love is for council to ask about the metrics and how confident administration is in the metrics. Like I looked at the LiDAR data and they were saying we increased our canopy from 10% in 2012 to 13% in 2020. So that would make us think we're headed in the right direction. But when I look at the 2018 data, the aerial imagery and LiDAR showed the canopy was at 13.8%. So that's according to the PVLI data that's online and available, which I presume is our best available data. So it would seem that we're actually headed in the wrong direction. And my observations walking around the city would endorse that we're headed in the wrong direction. So I really think we need really good metrics, like growing trees, not planting trees, really good canopy metrics. And I would hope that council can ask about some of those metrics. Yeah, because we need to know that we're headed in the right direction. I think everybody believes we need more trees. Our ambition of 20% isn't as ambitious as it could be. So I think we need every tool we can have. And, just like the Edmonton Area Land Trust does private land conservation, and people trust them more than they trust the city because they don't change their minds. I think we need more private tree protection. We need more confidence that we're headed in the right direction. So yeah, I think I want council to ask about the LiDAR data and whether we're actually headed in the right direction. And what does it mean when the LiDAR data shows that in 2018 we were at 13.8% and now we're at 13%? Does council have metrics that are good enough to know that we are headed in the right direction? Do we have metrics that are good enough to hold administration accountable? Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Vro. Next is Eric Gormley.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Stevenson. I have a couple of slides too. Are they going to go up?
Yep, we have them up on our screens. There we go. You can see them there.
Okay. 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 A private tree bylaw, I'm in favor of it. Trees have come into the spotlight as people look for ways to make their urban spaces more climate friendly. As administration pointed out, they improve air quality, source of carbon capture, they cool the landscape, act as pollinator habitat, mitigate floods, and of course are essential for songbirds. Most cities are trying to increase their tree canopy as a way of combating negative impacts of climate change. Most cities, including Edmonton, have a public tree bylaw. According to Dustin Bezier, in Edmonton, private trees make up more of our urban forest than any other component. Typically in Canada, more than 50% of the urban canopy is tied to private land. In Toronto, 60% of the tree canopy is on private land, and in Cambridge, Ontario, that number is 80%. Many Canadians, as Dale pointed out, have a private tree bylaw. Vancouver and Victoria, Montreal and Quebec City, Ottawa, and a host of other cities in Ontario, including Ajax, Barrie, Mississauga, Peterborough, Oakville, Vaughan, Kitchener, Kingston, and Guelph. And of course, Toronto also has a private tree bylaw. The idea is to have a landowner obtain a permit to cut down a tree or trees, much in the same way a landowner has to obtain a demolition permit to remove a building. The criteria for having to get a permit to cut down a tree on private property varies from city to city with private tree bylaws. A determinant could be the size of the tree or being able to get consent from the adjacent property owner. One city simply asks for details on the species, the diameter of the tree, the reason why the owner wants to cut the tree, and whether trees are being replanted. Several municipalities have insisted on a development plan being in place prior to trees being removed. One can't remove trees simply because one owns them. We've come to recognize trees as part of the greater good. All progressive municipalities have education programs and talk about incentives to protect trees on private lands, and this is positive. But a bylaw that makes landowners get a permit for removing trees is most effective for preserving trees because it's an actual enforcement tool. City administration's main rationale has been pointed out for opposing a private tree bylaw. It might get in the way of densifying the city, conveniently forgets the myriad benefits trees bestow upon a city and the importance of protecting them wherever they are in the city. Our goal should not be densifying per se, but rather creating a climate resilient city. A private tree bylaw for Edmonton has been discussed at least since 2015. Instituting a private tree bylaw would show the city is serious about combating climate change and loss of biodiversity. And I just have a couple of slides. This is one of the properties in Riverdale that there was probably like 15 trees on that, and it's just completely cut down. The only trees that are, the one on the right-hand side is on city land, and that's why it didn't go. Next slide, please. And that's the front of the house there. You can see they were all mature trees. I think they were all spruce trees along the front there. And the next slide, please. And even on the perimeter, you can see they've cut the trees down on the perimeter. And next slide, please. And this is the second property. And next slide, please. And there's what it looks like. Next slide, please. And about 15 or 20 trees on that particular property. And then this property is now for sale. So I hope that City Council finds a way to bring in a private tree bylaw. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Next is Sherry Heschuk, who I think is joining us online. Sherry, are you there?
She had let us know that she was out of town and might be having Wi-Fi issues, so we can circle back to her.
Sounds good. Thank you. We'll go next then to Monica Grusmacher.
Great. Thank you very much. And that actually is quite a nice change, because the points I want to talk to today complement Eric's presentation. So I am in favor of a private tree bylaw. And as we've heard today and in many occasions in the past, there is no doubt of the importance of trees and the benefit, the health benefits and the well-being benefits of trees, not just for individuals, but also for the city as a whole, for the surroundings of the city as well, and for future generations of people living here in Edmonton. Now, so I think it is pretty clear for us that trees are very important and that they make for a better city. That should be very clear, and I think it is. And today and during this week, we will be very much reminded of that with this harsh transition from winter to summer. Basically, we will all be looking for the shade of trees in this week during this mini heat wave that we have. So I won't speak to that today. I think that is quite clear. I think that the big difference that we are making here is between trees that are on private land and trees that are on public land. And as we know, it makes no difference for the tree at all, or little difference, except perhaps that trees on private land add to the diversity and resilience of the urban ecosystem. The difference is made by us. We are the ones that are making the difference between trees on private and on public land. The benefits are there. And so what it is important for us to keep in mind is that this is about protecting that welfare, protecting the trees. It is not a discussion of whether it is to stop infill or not. And I think that is a point that I want to make, that this is not about stopping infill, and it should not be a point. Protecting trees on private land should not be about stopping infill. I think we all also recognize that our city is growing, that we need space to make space for a growing city. We are at the edge also of a coming homelessness crisis, housing crisis. So it is important for us to keep thinking. And that is, I think, the second point I want to make is that we cannot stop thinking, and that it is not easy for us to overcome this challenge. But stop thinking, I think, in my terms, is to think in terms of silver bullets, that there is one way of approaching this problem. Just looking, as many have mentioned already, looking at infill, or looking at housing as starting from a blank slate, empty lot. That is stop thinking, means that just looking at infill, starting from a blank lot. Yeah, stopping to think, yeah, is to believe that nothing should change, yeah, or that change should happen somewhere else, not in my backyard. Change is coming, and we need to address it, and we need to take the challenge. Yeah, and it is also not about dealing with it in a piecemeal solutions or piecemeal ways. We live in a city that is not a collection of infrastructures. Yeah, and I think that's the third point I want to make, that we need to look at our city in terms of a system. Yeah, we need to look at it in terms of a living system, not a collection of infrastructure. It is not a machine, yeah, that is fixed by fixing little pieces of infrastructure. Yeah, we need to think of it as a living system, just like when we go to a doctor when we are not healthy, we have a range of options. Yeah, we need to encourage that. You know, we need to encourage those different perspectives and diversity of ways of viewing the overcoming these challenges. Yeah, so that means that we need to think of the context. Yeah, we need to think of the context of the infill, the changes that we are making. That means that we cannot just think of a lot, but of the whole private urban landscape as a whole.
Great. Thank you so much for your comments. That is your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I'll go next to Christine Kwelchuk, joining us remotely.
Thank you. And I do have some slides that I sent in last night.
Great. We'll just get those pulled up. Yeah, we've got those on our screen here.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Edmonton River Valley Conservation Coalition. We strongly urge you to direct administration to create a private tree bylaw. And we were part of the engagement group set up to create the public tree bylaw a few years ago, and we're told at the time that a private tree bylaw would be next, and that's what today's meeting was to be about. So I agree with Marlena. It's disappointing to see today's report barely mention the bylaw against evidence of its clear benefit and clear public support. Next slide, please. As the city's urban forestry management plan states, Edmonton's trees represent an irreplaceable asset, and unlike other municipal infrastructure, trees increase in value over time. The urban forest makes a quantifiable contribution to the long-term livability of our city. Next slide, please. Trees do critical work in mitigating climate change, cleaning the air, cooling the city, helping to prevent both drought and flooding, and providing food and habitat for wildlife, including pollinators. They also contribute greatly to Edmontonians' physical and mental health and are central to the beauty of our city. We need to recognize that trees are economically, ecologically, and socially invaluable. In fact, we can't afford not to protect them. Next slide, please. The city plan commits to planting 2 million new trees. Likewise, the city's 2021-2022 urban forest management plan states its goal of increasing the city's canopy cover from 13.3 to 20%. However, tree planting alone will never help us effectively mitigate climate change or achieve our canopy goals. More important and more cost-efficient is to protect the mature trees we already have. Next slide, please. As William Muma, lead author on 5 reports for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has shown, mature trees provide exponentially greater ecosystem benefits, including sequestering more carbon than young trees. In Edmonton, as mature trees make up only 15% of the city's urban forest, it's critical that we protect every one of these trees as much as possible, especially in the context of the climate crisis. Now that Edmonton has a public tree bylaw, it makes sense to create consistent policy and implement a private tree bylaw as well. Next slide, please. This would also align us with other Canadian cities, including Toronto, Ottawa, Vancouver, and nearly a dozen cities in Ontario. Next slide, please. Importantly, Edmontonians want such a bylaw. Urban Forestry's April 2020 What We Heard report states that of over 3,000 Edmontonians surveyed, between 52 and 70% of respondents agreed that they support this bylaw to protect trees on private property. Today's report indicates strong support for tree preservation in 2022 survey as well. Next slide, please. Private tree bylaws work by requiring permits with fees for tree cutting on private property. The permit forces a pause and prevents mindless, senseless cutting, and ensures at least some monetary value for the tree. The bylaw, unlike existing processes, which are insufficient at protecting trees, creates a standard for tree preservation and offers an opportunity for public education. It also often requires that any trees cut be replaced at a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio. These measures all work together as incentives to preserve mature trees whenever possible, and the permit costs can cover the administrative work and enforcement of the bylaw itself. Next slide, please. Private tree bylaws do not conflict with density. As a January 2022 Strong Towns article emphasizes, pitting tree preservation against density is a false argument. The author, who's an urban planner, notes that unlike single home zoning or minimum parking regulations, tree preservation bylaws are not an impediment to density. Instead, they ensure good design. A good infill developer, he says, will think, how can I not only accommodate these trees, but locate things to maximize their benefit? And they absolutely provide benefit to the homeowner, to the city, and to the developer. Homeowners benefit from greatly reduced energy consumption from things like air conditioners, and the cities benefit from decreased stormwater runoff. Next slide, please. Developers also benefit from improved reputation as the communities in which they use mature trees as a selling feature do not then lose trees from the development itself. Next slide, please. Densification cannot be a single-minded goal of fitting in more people. Big city thinking recognizes the need to prioritize nature and work with her for the benefit of all. Once we take that perspective, alternatives appear. That suggests that densification should be, the greatest amount of public space in our cities taken up by roads. That suggests that densification should be understood as primarily a transportation issue. Rather than widening roads, I think we should be on the next slide, please, which has been proven to simply further induce demand for more cars. We should repurpose many existing roads into an excellent bus-based public transit system and into bike and pedestrian zones. And then we could turn parking lots into homes. It's cars that get in the way of density, not trees. Next slide, please. We should also be looking at retrofitting existing buildings. Construction is the greatest contributor globally of carbon emissions. Protecting trees will help encourage efficient retrofits. Next slide, please. The city's plan's goal is not just density, but also sustainability, resilience, and livability. And these goals are not achieved if trees are cut down. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Next, we have Jan Hardstaff here in person with us. Sure, that's no trouble. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm Wendy Antoniuk. I'm, just to clarify, I'm unpaid by any organization or group, just a taxpayer and a person who cares about our city and about the future of the city for our grandchildren. Before I begin the content here, I feel like I really have to remind you as councillors that you are bound by the Municipal Government Act, which states, and it's on the slide, you're directed to achieve the orderly, economical, and beneficial development, use of land, and patterns of human settlement, and to maintain and improve the quality of the physical environment within which patterns of human settlement are situated in Alberta. And you are legally bound to do those things. You're also guided by Value 5 of the City Plan, which says to preserve what matters most. We certainly know that Edmontonians value trees. Your own city surveys have shown that. The City Plan highlights the importance of trees to achieve climate resiliency, health, and environmental sustainability. So, how is it that with the climate emergency that has been declared by the city, I think it was 2019, that we and you as councillors are doing so little to our city that is being threatened, to our environment? We need to be doing more, not less. This cannot be a choice between density and climate resilience. There can only be one path, and that's climate resilience. In fact, it's a fact that trees and real green space make a quantifiable contribution to the long-term viability of the city. That's a direct quote from the City Plan. And at least half of Edmonton's trees are on private land, as other speakers have already mentioned. There's a study, actually my colleague Bev will, Jan will mention it, where it's from, that there's some debate over whether we're going from 10% to 13%. Well, the study showed that Edmonton, compared to other municipalities, Edmonton over the last 20 years has a 31% decrease in green space. there's a question about metrics, but this study found 31% decrease. If we continue the path that we're on, with our current priorities, for example, the LRT Valley Line takes down 1,200 mature trees. That's more trees than all of Horlock Park, all of the park. And if we continue on with the current approach in mature neighborhoods, which each lot has 10 or 12 trees, if we lose all of that, we are definitely decreasing our canopy. It is recommended by administration, if the recommendations by administration are pursued and the new zoning is enacted, there will be a radical decrease. The 2 million trees to be planted will only be a drop in the bucket to address the issues. Many people have already shown, and could you change the slides, please? And next one, please. That's the one that shows the decrease in the green space. Next one, please. There, thank you. Sorry, where is it? Yeah. So many other speakers have raised this. Why do every other major city in the country have, a tree bylaw? And also Portland, if you want to look outside of Edmonton, has one to protect private trees. There's no reason why we can't do this. Development will still happen. Density will be added, even if a private tree bylaw is there. It may mean that there be a pause to clear cutting. It may mean that there will be better density added, that it will be including the trees. A private tree protection bylaw and more robust landscaping regulations in Section 5.9 of the landscaping bylaw would support the 2018 climate resiliency adaptation strategies in the action plan. In summary, the report from administration fell short in providing options for private tree bylaw. We'd like you to refer to the handout that we provided for administration on tree protection bylaw. We have a climate emergency, and this council has an opportunity to address it right now and to get on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Jan Hardstaff next.
Before I begin, I just need you to advance the slide to the start of my presentation. Keep going. Keep going. That's it. Stop. And if you could possibly make it larger so council could see it. My name is Jan Hardstaff. I'm a horticulturist and retired landscaper with some experience in LID. And I support infill density, and it's absolutely possible to do that and protect trees and preserve trees on lots. In addition to supporting a private tree protection bylaw, we have an opportunity right now during the bylaw renewal, zoning bylaw renewal, to draft zones that will achieve climate resilience. We need to also draft landscaping regulations that don't make it easier for developers to just walk away without landscaping the lot, but actually achieve climate resilience on the lot. So this slide, it shows green asset area. That's green. Building site coverage and impervious hard surfaces for the proposed RS zone. That's brown and gray. And a typical mature development and current RF3 M&O development, shown in beige. It shows how increasing site intensification and total imperviousness of buildings and hard surfaces reduces green space. The mature development has 35% total site imperviousness, leaving 65% of the site covered with deep soil, lawn, and an average of 4 to 5 trees per lot. The M&O infill site has about 65% total site imperviousness and green asset area, which is cut in half to about 35%. The RS zone proposes to maximize building site coverage to 47%. None of the RS zones that I've shown here will ever meet the 70% maximum site imperviousness, which is going to be carried over in the landscaping bylaw. This is why there's a caveat allowing multi-unit row housing to be at 75% maximum site imperviousness, and there will be no maximum applied to cluster housing. So what you're going to end up with is only 25% of the site for green asset area for row housing and 15 to 0% for cluster housing. Slide 5. Next slide, please. What does this mean? As density and site intensity increases, green asset area decreases. A recent report by Tomorrow's Foundation found 40% of infill sites had no trees, and I can verify that that's happening in my neighborhood too. This shows green asset area will be reduced from 65% for mature development to 35% for current infill under the MNO, to 25% for row housing and 15% for cluster housing, and that could be 0. This is confirmed in a Statistics Canada report that indicates since 2016, Edmonton's urban greenness has declined from 58.6 to 34.8. This is an alarming statistic. What needs to be added to the zoning bylaw is a firm 30% minimum green asset site area that has deep soil, living green cover, and 2 or more medium to large mature trees, which will be an investment toward climate resilience in the future. We cannot allow the total imperviousness on a site to a ratio to green asset area to go from 1 to 2 to 2 to 1, and then propose an RS zone where it could be 3 to 1 or 6 to 1 without transferring significant risk of long-term and cumulative negative benefit impacts to the environment, to our city, and to current and future residents. We must build more than density. We need to build climate-resilient communities and a healthy, safe, livable, and affordable neighborhoods. Next slide, please. The other thing that the RS zone proposes is a flexible development box. This allows the builder to build a building all the way to the front setback or all the way to the rear setback, and there's only 0.9 meters separating or keeping the rear detached garage separate from the front building. There is none for backyard housing. It could possibly be attached. This gives builders flexibility, and it reduces the need for discretionary use and variances, but this is not without environmental consequences. A staggered front block face is the result. There's a possibility for a continuous 10.5 meter high wall of development from the front to the rear. You end up with small boxed in rear yards surrounded by 10.5 meter high walls. Rear parking lots for multi-unit buildings and large driveways increase impervious surfaces, along with the heat island effect and stormwater runoff. The reduced green asset area leaves room for only small trees that provide 10% of the environmental benefits that large mature trees do. Next slide, please. Reducing maximum site coverage to 44% and maintaining the current minimum rear setback of 40% site depth, in other words, what we already have, and allowing 3-story buildings will allow exactly the same amount of density that you are proposing or that city administration is proposing in the RS zone. I have done the math, and I know that you can have the same amount of units, they're just slightly smaller. We've provided a handout of recommendations for you, and I know I'm running out of time. So I'm just going to ask you to please tighten up the landscaping regulations and create zoning that will allow us to build climate resilient communities.
Great, thank you. Next is Elaine Solis.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me. I have very little voice. I'm not sick. I'm affected by the dust and the dry air. I'm speaking today on behalf of the communities in the Scona district and will highlight key points in the letter I sent yesterday. It's important to plant more trees on public land, and planting more trees on boulevards, converting untreed boulevards to treed ones, is a good way to increase Edmonton's tree canopy. Trees are important for healthy climate, healthy ecosystem, and healthy people, as you've heard from other speakers today. The materials for this agenda item indicate overwhelming support for planting more trees on public land in Edmonton from the What We Heard reports. I'm sure I responded to that survey question in the affirmative too. However, we weren't asked if we wanted trees to cover all our open areas in the city that aren't sports fields, so we wouldn't have a space to gather or engage in informal recreation activities like tossing a frisbee. I would have said no to that question. And I refer you to the photo I sent yesterday of a park in my neighborhood that has both a large number of mature trees and open space for a variety of formal and informal activities. We really need these open spaces, needed these open spaces during COVID, and they will become increasingly important as higher density infill development replaces larger private outdoor amenity spaces like backyards with small balconies, decks, and patios. Our point is there needs to continue to be a balance between trees and open spaces that needs to be taken into account as the city goes about planting 2 million trees on public land by 2030. When we spoke to you in January in the district planning discussion, we suggested that the tree planting plans be incorporated into the district plans. The reason for this is the close link between land use plans and loss of mature trees on private property as infill increases in mature neighborhoods. Mature trees on private property contribute to the overall tree canopy in the city, and considering the number of mature trees that will be removed on private property will help, as the tree planting plan goes forward, will help make sure the plan keeps pace. As examples, city properties in Pleasant View recently rezoned from RF1 to RF2 and 3 contain about 30 mature trees, which will be lost to infill. And the site recently rezoned RF1 to DC2 in Windsor Park for a 6-story building contains about 50 mature trees that won't be retained. In fact, very few trees are retained in any infill at this point. And the only times they are retained is when a large single RF1 property is a new house, single-family house is built on that. When it's subdivided for skinnies, all the trees are clear-cut. We also indicated in January that district plans should consider the need for more park space as the population grows and the size of private amenity areas shrink. Sufficient space for tree planting is another reason to acquire land for park space, or in the Pleasant View situation, rezone some existing property to parkland rather than for infill development, which of course was an option you had, but you chose to go the other way in that. And last but not least, it's important to engage with residents and communities that will be affected by tree planting plans, as well as conducting high-level citywide engagement. Thank you for considering these suggestions, and I refer you to the 4 recommendations in yesterday's email that I've summarized above.
Great, thank you very much. And our final speaker today, Bruce Dancic.
Hi, Bruce Dancic. I'm trained as a forester, forest ecologist, forest geneticist. I taught at the university for many years a tree and shrub course, and I was director of the Devonian Botanic Garden for 10 years. I support this proposed bylaw and for protection of trees on private land, and we talked, all the speakers before talked about how important this is, so I won't belabor that point. When I came to Edmonton, Edmonton had probably the largest population of mature elm trees, American elm, Ulmus americana, in the world. Partly by a little bit of luck, the Dutch elm disease, which was ravaging the natural populations of elms in Europe and in the United States, is carried by a beetle, European bark beetle. Cities with good elm populations were pretty well protected from it, except for people unknowingly bringing in firewood from someplace else that contains some of the beetles and the disease. And the city's been good, the administration's been good at being on top of that, cutting down those few occasional infected trees, burning them so there's no infestation. But we got to keep our vigilance on that. And I've been very pleased to see we've been using things like bur oak, Quercus macrocarpa, technically not native here. I would argue it is native. It gets to extreme southeastern Alberta. It comes across the prairies, and if we had another 10,000 years since glaciation, it would probably be here in Edmonton by itself, but we've helped it along. It's a more valuable tree now by the city's own standards than the American elm or spruce, 110% on their scale. Tree values are and the bur oak, by the way, doesn't get here so easily because it's propagated by the nuts, the acorns, and acorns don't blow very well. And squirrels are not long-distance runners, so it comes here slowly. But it's a wonderful tree, and we should have more of them. Mature trees in this city are valued. I was just talking with a colleague of Milton Davies, a former student who's very active with Arbor Tree. He values mature elms in the city in good shape from $25,000 to $50,000 each tree. And even a young 10 or 12-inch oak or elm has a value of $6,000 to $10,000. It's for a lot for the people that are there. We've done too much to get rid of mature trees. The city's been guilty of it as much as anybody else on public land, much less private land. I'm appalled to see the trees that have been cut down theoretically for the right-of-way of the rapid transit, because many of those trees did not need to be cut down. It's just been for the convenience of the builders making space so they don't have to work around things. I think of Vancouver, where I've been along some streets where you're driving, you're actually afraid to drive a little bit because the trees are right against the curb. I'd like to see more of that problem in Edmonton.
Yeah.
It's something to aspire to. It's a problem, but we can cope with it. When they're gone, it takes a hell of a long time to grow them back from scratch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to all of our speakers for joining us this morning. I'll now ask my colleagues to sign up if they have any questions for you. So please stay where you are, and we'll get some questions coming your way. You did a great job. Councillor Rutherford.
Yeah, I guess I believe it is, was it Wendy or Jan, I'm not sure, but who mentioned about the article that talked about the 31% decrease in green space? Yes. Who's that?
We both sort of mentioned it.
Okay, so I just looked that up. It looks like a news article. Do you know where the original source of that data came from?
It was in an article by the Natural Observer, but I actually have the statistics that I brought from the Federal Statistics Canada, which shows the decrease from 2016 of about, I think it was 52% to about 35%.
So there
is a Government of Canada statistical survey, StatsCan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I can leave that.
Yeah, that would be great. I would appreciate.
Yeah, it's the urban greenness and normalized difference vegetation index, the NDVI, by population center. And it was done in, I think it's 2021.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. That helps to clarify that for me right now. I'm going to go to our last speaker, Bruce. So, given your expertise, I thought that I'd circle back to some of the original speakers were talking about, the seedlings and the difference in worth and value between the mature trees and, new tree growth. And I thought it would be interesting to get your take on that as well.
We all support tree planting. In many areas, like an urban environment, it's the only way we get new trees. However, it's ludicrous to remove adult big trees for no other reason than to reduce that canopy. It's crazy. We've got that canopy there. It's going to take 50 to 100 years to get seedlings to get any kind of canopy close to that. So why get rid of those mature trees when you don't have to, if you don't have to? And I just saw an article about somebody who won the award in architecture for keeping, was it 47 trees on a lot. We can do it.
Perfect. I just want to be mindful of my time so I can get through my questions, given we only have this morning. So to Ms. Farreau, one of the things that you mentioned was that you thought that some of the information in the report might not be totally telling the whole story in terms of that the canopy coverage in 2018 was 13.8, and in the report for 2020 it says 13%. So I just wanted to see if my understanding was correct. Are you suggesting that we've lost 0.8% between 2018 and 2022? Is that what your point was with that? Am I understanding that correctly?
My internet, you were pixelated there. Are you here? I know you're talking about the LiDAR data. The report said are you hearing me okay?
Yep, please.
Now we are. You were breaking up a little bit, but I'll just quickly repeat it. Are you suggesting that we're regressing a little bit from 2018 to 2020 and that we've lost 0.8% of our canopy? Is that what you were highlighting? I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correct. I see Christine Kowalczyk. Maybe you can jump in if you might have insight into that.
Thank you. I know Rocky and I have talked about this before, and that is exactly what we are thinking. And even since 2020 or 2022, when the last data was collected, more trees have come down. And using Riverdale as an example, there have been probably at least 30 mature trees that have come down, this spring alone. So we're seeing like massive drops in tree canopy in our neighborhood and across the city.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions for the speakers. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rutherford. Mayor Sohi?
Yeah, first of all, thank you to each and every one of you for being here today. I think it's important that we preserve our current canopy of trees. But I do have a question because it's about balancing, because city also have a very ambitious goal of accommodating 50% of the future growth in mature neighborhoods, right? So I don't think any other city has that ambitious a goal to accommodate population growth instead of sprawling out, right? Because that also has an environmental impact. So I don't know who can answer this question. How are other cities that have private, have a protection for trees on private properties, how are they accommodating, how are they balancing that? Does anybody know how, say, Toronto or Vancouver, how are they accommodating infill growth in mature neighborhoods?
I'll take a stab at answering that question.
At the same time protecting trees.
Okay, well, first of all, you were talking about how we have an ambitious goal to grow infill by adding 50% of new housing as infill. And I agree with that goal. I can support that goal. But my slides showed, and I actually sent you a report that with an attachment to more information, that under the current zoning of 44% site coverage for RF1 and RF2 and a 40% setback, you will have enough room on the lot to actually plant 1 or 2 large trees and maintain climate resilience. In other cities, I did look at a few other cities. Most other cities, instead of on a 600 square meter lot with a 75% minimum area for each dwelling, you could have 8 units.
Okay.
In Vancouver and Victoria, it's 6. So we're exceeding the other cities in terms of units. I think the ambitiousness of this, you have to make a decision of, are you going to save trees and build a climate resilient city, or are you going to save builders by reducing their barriers and cutting red tape?
Got it.
So I think we have to do both.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just trying to understand what are the other best practices. One of them you highlighted, and how other cities are balancing that. That's I just needed to understand.
And just to one more point is that, you know, this whole report basically dismissed on the first page the proposed private tree protection bylaw. Just dismissed it outright. They don't support it. Yeah. And then it spent the rest of the report sort of saying how we need to lower the bar for developers. What you need to do is do both. You need to build infill, and that's part of the city plan, and you need to have greener as we grow, and you cannot only rely on the public trees to do the heavy lifting.
Got
it. If we lose those public trees in a fire in our river valley, for example, or we lose public trees to Dutch elm disease or other just plain drought and climate change, we will decimate our urban forest, and that will have catastrophic consequences.
Mayor Sohi, might I just jump in for one moment to give an example here in Edmonton?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Okay, so it was on a slide towards the end of my presentation, and I didn't speak to it very clearly, but here in Riverdale, we have the Sundance Co-op housing, which is high-density housing, and when it was first built, it kept all of the mature trees. And now it's undergoing a retrofit, and that retrofit is also preserving the mature trees. So we're actually doing it right here in Edmonton.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And just last question to, again, I hope you're engaged with city as we are undertaking the zoning regulation review. Is any one of you engaged in that conversation?
I think we all are.
Oh, that's great. Because I think those creative ideas that are absolutely important.
We all are, but the bar is so low. The landscaping regulations, for example, and it was mentioned in attachment 1, that you can substitute softscaping, soil, lawns, shrubs, trees, with hardscaping materials that are permeable, like rocks, shale, paving stones, and artificial turf. And that is supposed to be climate resilient. It says so right in attachment 1. This has to be changed. Somehow, city administration, and I hope council, will understand the value of green infrastructure. It will save our city, and it'll save the city money, because you're going to have to offset this in the public realm if you lose it in the private realm.
Yeah. No, thank you, and thank you so much for being here and engaging. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you to all of our speakers. Those are all the questions that I see on the board. So thanks again for joining us today. We're going to turn now to our administration, questions of administration. You're very welcome to stay for that conversation. And for those of you speaking on 7.2 as well, we will get to you after we've finished our discussion on 7.1. Great, thank you. I'll go now to Councillor Rutherford for questions of administration.
Sure, and I'm going to just preface this by that I probably will have a couple rounds. I have a lot of questions on this one. I'll start with questions that have kind of arisen in my mind from the speakers today. You know, you did talk in the report about kind of the net new, but it doesn't actually give the picture of what is that addition plus subtraction. Like, how many trees are we losing, right? What does the loss look like? Like, I'm thinking about the next report, 7.2 with Horlock Park. I'm thinking about Yellowhead Trail Freeway Conversion Program, the LRT. We must be losing, we are losing a lot of trees, and I don't see that in the report here.
Yeah, I can answer that. So there's, I'm just trying to pull up the number. I believe there's about 3,100 annually that we lose. Sorry, that's renewal trees. The math. Sorry, maybe I should just check the number here real quick.
Yeah, maybe we'll circle back to that one. I'd be curious about that. And then I guess the other question I had is, what is the survival rate of our seedlings? So as we're doing the Roots for Trees program, as we're doing tree planting, how many of them are actually surviving? And are we capturing that in our data?
Councillor, the survival rate, roughly around 60%. It varies on sites. Some more hostile sites, along arterial roadways, et cetera, we might see lower survivability, but generally above 60%. We do plants at a higher density to account for those losses.
So when we talk about net new, is that accounting for the 60% loss?
Yes, there's a mortality factor built in, and we have a pretty proactive program in terms of infill planting post-establishment. So go back, assess the site. If we see substantial losses, then we'll send teams back to provide additional seedlings.
Okay. Now, do we do any stats on the loss of trees on private properties?
It would be accounted for in the canopy cover analysis. But we don't go out and survey individual sites for tree losses. We do that on the public end. with around 3,000 trees lost annually.
So it is 3,000 trees lost annually?
Approximately, yeah. Public.
Yes, on public, yeah.
Yeah. I should clarify, those would be open space and boulevard trees.
Yep, yep.
There's additional mortality in natural areas.
Oh, there's additional mortality in natural areas. So are you talking about like the river valley?
Yeah, and we're not really actively surveying individual trees. It's more of a canopy level analysis.
Okay. So this 3,000 is literally just the trees and boulevards and park spaces?
Correct.
Okay. But we don't know, for example, if we're doing a rezoning or there's a new development, like the good example of like the Windsor Park one that was recently just passed. We don't track how many trees we're losing in that lot.
Not at a stem count level currently.
What would it take to have that data?
Yeah, I mean we could discuss internally and see if we could add it into the existing processes.
Yeah, because I feel like that could just be in a development permit stage, how many trees are, not necessarily as a permit for the trees,
yep.
but as a data collection
yep.
point. Okay, would that be something that, is Ms. McCabe here?
I believe Ms. McCabe's team is on the line, and perhaps one of her team can provide some insight on how that could be tracked during the development process.
Yeah, I would ask that, and would you need direction on that?
We can get you that information the course of this morning for sure.
Gord, Kim's online. She can provide some thoughts on that.
Councillor Rutherford, we don't currently track tree removal with a development permit application. In the course of this morning, I can look to see if that's information easily tracked or not and follow up.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. If that's something that can be a minor change to a permitting application to start to collect that data. And if you need direction, I would like to know that as well from council. Thank you. I will come back for a second round, so I'll stop there.
That's great. Thank you. Mayor Sohi.
Yeah, so planting new trees is important, but also preserving trees that we have is equally important, and preserving trees on private properties is important. So can you tell me, how do other cities, if other cities are successful having a private property, preserving trees on private property bylaws, why can we not do it? What is the problem that other cities are able to do it, but we are not?
So we did a jurisdictional scan as we were building the public tree bylaw several years ago, and the feedback we were getting on both administering public and private bylaws by the cities we spoke with was it's very hard to administer on a kind of individual lot basis. That often the sheer scale of managing a program on public alongside private is substantial.
But they're doing it, right? Or are they not enforcing the bylaws then?
Yeah, they said there was a lack of resourcing in terms of being able to enforce both public and private in their jurisdictions.
Okay, so even having a bylaw without enforcement, those municipalities are losing trees on private properties?
Yeah, in some of the cases, I think it was City of Vancouver, they are still allowing removal of trees on private under their bylaw, but there's typically an offset. But from when we were talking directly to the technical teams and the foresters, there's still substantial loss, and in the act of preservation and the best support that the city can provide, post-construction mortality was high. So trees die after the fact, after the inspections anyway. So it presented a number of challenges to their technical team, and they found efficacy was pretty spotty.
Okay, and do we have, I hear you what you're saying, right? But then why would they continue to have a bylaw that is ineffective, right? So I'm trying to understand that aspect, right?
Yeah.
So if
So the information we had, like even with the administering the public tree bylaw, has been a challenge for these municipalities in terms of response time, having people to be on sites, and providing technical expertise that could support it. I mean, those are the bylaws they have. It was one of the reasons we really discussed completely that resourcing was important, that if we were going to do this adequately for the public tree bylaw, that we have enough staff to take care of the work and support
Do you know the magnitude of like how many resources are they spending on bylaw enforcement? Like what would be required in our case if we do have a
so,
bylaw?
Mr. Mayor, we would need to take that away. I think the mechanism you're talking about, a private tree bylaw, would be something that would be a tool that could control the amount of removals on private property, but there would be a whole bunch of considerations in terms of resourcing as well as engagement with industry. So that it is something that, you know, is you know, potentially an alternative, but we would need to do a lot more work to really understand what it would take.
Well, I think that's the challenge with the report too, right? That it's you've done that analysis and you make recommendations not to have but you're not giving further like what is required if council has a desire to have a bylaw to protect trees on private properties. What would be required to make it effective? Not just have something on the books, but not be effective. Yeah. What would that be?
And I think that would take a lot more work than this report. This report was intended to be the high level and give you an assessment of what we were doing with respect to a number of different initiatives and opportunities, including private tree bylaw being one of those options. If there's desire to go to more work to better understand what a private tree bylaw would look like, we would want direction to go and do that work and come back with a really detailed response to say, okay, if we wanted to, as a city, to move forward with the private tree bylaw, here are the steps we would take, here are the considerations, and here's what the resourcing would look like.
No, thank you for that, because I don't think we have that fulsome kind of analysis to have that thorough debate and discussion on it.
Yeah, and understanding that, and I think in the report we say recommendation, and that's based on the knowledge and understanding we have at this point.
Thank you. I have more questions. I'll come back. Yep.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Tang.
Great, thank you very much. Just wanted to follow up on that jurisdictional scan you did before. Did these other cities also have other tools that, like the ones you mentioned in the report, like the incentives and whatnot?
Yes. Several of them had incentive programs around donations of trees to individuals or groups interested in planting, similar to our Root for Trees program, for example. Tree giveaways are a popular tool that we heard. And then just general education and appreciation events, like programs that support communities in understanding environmental benefits of trees, contributions on private and public.
And so, you know, like a lot of cities, everyone's kind of exploring all kinds of, like, all array of tools. Any sense of how these perhaps other tools are working relative to this private tree bylaw that doesn't sound like it's very effective? Wonder if you just comment on that.
Just from reviewing the jurisdictional scan, so there's other municipalities have a variety of programs. There's incentives, education, permits. From the research we've done, is it's with varying success and it has a number of challenges. So what we looked at and the recommendation was, while it can be done, there are a number of challenges with it, just based on feedback and learnings from the public tree bylaw. In order to set something up and to start to enforce, roughly would be about $1 million upfront in order to start to administer and enforce. So for those were the reasons why administration was recommending not required at this point.
Yeah, I can appreciate some of the challenge when it comes to funding, since some of the operating impact of capital wasn't actually approved in the 4-year cycle, and kind of this actually adds on top of that cost. So I can understand the tension you're faced with.
And Councillor, if I could just add that that $1 million is a pretty high level estimate in terms of what it would take if we were to really want to make this an effective tool, we would want to understand what that resourcing would look like and what those constraints would be.
Yeah, because we wouldn't want to put something in place that we know has limited success in other cities for the sake of just putting it in without the adequate resourcing to actually allow it to be successful.
Correct.
Yeah, I can appreciate that perspective. Just on the sort of the volunteer tree piece, I was curious about kind of adding new tree side of things. How do you? Because I feel like in the past year I've had a few volunteer groups that I haven't really heard of before, kind of approaching the city about wanting to plant more trees. This is outside of the Roots for Trees, so I'm just wondering how much do you folks interact with those groups? Things like Plant for Life, Plant Forever, and the forest projects and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we've got Nicole Fraser, who's the general supervisor for operations planning and monitoring on the line, and her team does this partnership work with so many different organizations that are external to the city and works closely with them. So, Nicole, if you're available to just provide a little bit more information on the partnership work that we're already doing.
Sure. Yes, through the Root for Trees program, we work with a number of different businesses as well as nonprofit organizations for tree planting projects, whether it's tree planting events, sponsored events, or partnerships. And so some examples of organizations that we work with that also facilitate other groups wanting to be involved in tree planting include Trees for Life, Tree Canada, TD Green Streets, CN Eco Connections. We're working right now on a pilot with Wild and Pine through the City as a Lab program, where they are working with companies who are interested in sustainability and planting trees and also carbon offsets. And so we're working on a project with Wild and Pine as well. So I'm just looking at...
so just in the interest of time,
sure.
So with it, you know, if that federal funding, the match funding is approved, I mean, that funding will be for net new trees, and that will go towards supporting some of this partnership work. Would you say so?
That funding will be primarily for net new trees, so growth, and then there is some funding in that capital profile and that grant application that would also go to the Park and Boulevard tree renewal as well that was being asked about earlier. But we are able to, we would be able to double the volunteer opportunities and increase partnership work through the Root for Trees program.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cartmel.
You know, thank you. I kind of want to dig into this from a bit of a different perspective, just for a moment. Do we have a sense of how many trees are cut down on private property? And I think we're talking predominantly residential property by the homeowner, and how many are cut down by a contractor coming in and reconstructing something on a property? Do we have a sense of that? Probably not, eh? That's pretty refined data.
No, again, I would go back to Mr. Kennedy's comments about we could really only assess that from, you know, the LiDAR type work, and it would be a high-level assessment. We wouldn't have individual numbers of that.
I wonder if we have so this might not be the right analogy, but I'm imagining that, you know, if on the circumstances that we created a bylaw that says you can't cut down a tree on private property, even your property, without a permit. I don't know if that would be the law, but on that presumption. You can't build on your property without a permit either. You can't build a monumental structure. You can't build a deck. You can't build a big wall. What's our compliant rate on that basis of people that proceed with those projects without a permit?
I'll just ask Ms. McCabe's team to weigh in on that.
Councillor Cartmel, are you asking about those that get a development permit and what is the compliance rate for development?
Well, so here's where I'm going, Ms. Petrin. If simply we're talking about the efficacy of having a law from an enforcement perspective, I guess my question is simply having a law going to generate at least some level of compliance with the law? And we might draw some conclusions with compliance with our building permit, development permit laws, and how many rogue developments we get that don't have any permits. But I don't know if we have a sense of that either.
I don't have the data in front of me, but I think that's a fair assessment that generally we have high levels of compliance for those doing development projects and getting the regulatory approvals to conduct development.
Yeah, like I don't want to be trite or oversimplifying this, but most people wear their seatbelts because there's a law, not because there's somebody checking every car. So if we have a law that says you need permission before you cut down a tree, now we might have to wrap some parameters around that. If the tree is diseased and endangering a structure, that kind of thing, right? But I wonder about that, and then I wonder if the enforcement part of, if we were going to consider an enforcement component of such a law, do we concentrate on those communities that are seeing infill contractor activity more than most? And does that begin to confine the high-level estimate? That, you know, so we're not trying to enforce a tree bylaw across the entire realm, but maybe in the mature neighborhood overlay neighborhoods as an example. Have we thought about that?
So I think we're seeing activity within our infill and mature communities because that's where we're focusing a lot of our growth, is in mature communities. The mature neighborhood overlay is proposed to be eliminated through the zoning bylaw renewal, and we're focused on redeveloping within the Anthony Henday. But I think, you know, what's before you today is around focusing on the public tree planting and maintenance. And we're not suggesting that private trees don't matter. Through the zoning bylaw, we do have private tree incentives, and we still have requirements for plantings. So plantings are still required as part of development. It's just not that it's regulated to remove existing trees.
And I think that's one of the primary questions raised. Certainly there's questions raised about tree removal in the public realm as well, but that's a different string of questions. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Carmel. I just have a few questions as well. So really appreciate the presentation and just the thought in terms of how we best approach this. Maybe to Ms. Petrin, do we have a sense of how often the tree retention incentive is taken advantage of at the DP stage?
I don't have that data in front of me, Councillor Stevenson. I can see if I can look that up, but I'm not sure if we track that.
Okay, yeah, I think, you know, to one of our speakers' point, I think having some of those stats to help us understand the success of that is really important. And I really hear this tension between, you know, the cost and outcome of setting up a private tree bylaw versus sort of incentives and encouragement and education. How do we parse that out, I guess? When we've looked at other jurisdictions who have a range of different approaches, can we draw any conclusions from that?
So a private tree bylaw isn't going to prevent trees on private property from being cut down. It implements a permitting process and they still happen. And then there's appropriate compensation for some of those trees. What it does do is give some checks and balances into determining why that tree is coming down, whether it's the size of the structure that's going on there, whether it's diseased, or whether it's going to impede utilities or things like that. So that would be the benefit of a private tree bylaw. But you're absolutely right; it's very divisive. There's people who are passionate on both sides of it for the preservation of trees, and also those who you know, are focused on their livelihood and the home that they're creating, the development that they're creating, the revenue that they're generating from that. So there's two sides to the.
Yeah, and I think sort of personal preference as well, or you know, how we manage our yards. But again, do we have any data, you know, case studies that we can draw from in terms of that sort of bylaw enforcement approach versus education, awareness raising, incentive approach?
One of the feedbacks that we got from the team here is that although there are other municipalities with some of these bylaws in place, there's not quite a sophisticated evaluation process that we could be able to give a quantitative metric in terms of its efficacy, if that helps.
Yeah.
And we're getting some real-time data on the implementation of our public tree bylaw, which is just rolling over on a year since we implemented that in May of 2022. So we're starting to get data on the efficacy of that. We certainly know the benefits and the challenges that we're experiencing in enforcing that, in educating. So I would expect to see the similar set of challenges, probably more so with a private tree bylaw versus public.
Okay, and some of that will be coming back to us to discuss, or would that be part of sort of any future work if we were to look at a private tree bylaw in terms of bringing those lessons in?
I think that would be part of that future work. But just to your earlier point about enforcement versus education, I think that it's not really one or the other. It's a balance and a combination. And if we look at some of the other programs, for example, our source separation, waste collection, it was a lot of pre-work in terms of engaging and educating, and then it was accompanied by a bylaw and a regulatory component. So I think it's a combination of both if you want to have a truly effective program.
Okay, that's a really helpful perspective. I appreciate that. Maybe two very quick last questions. I'm acutely mindful of the urban canopy in our downtown core, recognizing that it is very gray right now on some of our streetscapes. So just wondering if there are some specific targets around tree planting in the downtown, what we can expect to see.
Councillor, we've been running our replanting program downtown for many years. We prioritize replacement of tree losses annually to make sure that we're offsetting. We're also aware some of the infrastructure we have in place, like soil volume, structural soils, et cetera, are not optimal. So we have been working with our partners in IIS as street renewal has come up to make sure that we're putting in best technologies. Examples would be Imagine Jasper, where you have both LID facilities installed along with structural soils and silvicells. And so as additional sites come up for renewal, we're there at the table and we're making sure that there's good tree or soil volumes available for our urban trees.
Okay, great, thank you. I will go now to Councillor Knack on the board.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. I just wanted to ask quickly about the comment I think I heard just a little bit ago about sort of where the public is on this. I'm fairly certain, but I wouldn't mind checking that this has been overwhelmingly one of the most requested things that we've had when it comes to development in mature neighborhoods, a private tree bylaw. And that this comes from both those who are maybe more opponents of infill, but also those who are strong proponents of infill. I feel like we've done survey after survey, and I actually don't think there's nearly anywhere close to a split on this. So I just want to double check if my recollection over the last number of years aligns with data we've gathered as a city.
Councillor Knack, I need someone from the team to answer the details on that, but I do want to caution that some of the reason why a private tree bylaw is being suggested by some people is a way to stop lot splitting and density in our mature neighborhoods. So it's just the caution that you need to look at it from all perspectives and what the motivation is,
Yeah, and I guess there's a way to easily address that, right? I mean, that's I guess what I'm you know, I've been a strong proponent of trying to remove barriers of infill, and we have very successfully as the city done that far better than probably anyone in the country. And I think we're going to continue to do that over the coming year here with additional work, which is why I wonder if we're maybe overblowing maybe it feels like a bit of an overreaction. This alone would somehow create more challenges when I think we've removed so many barriers that if you add potentially one barrier, I won't deny that it would be a slight barrier, but a barrier that everyone seems to be asking for, you know, based off all of the net amount of changes, it will still be far easier to do infill in the city, even if we required some type of tree protection bylaw for new developments.
Without knowing the details of what that program would look like, I'm not confident agreeing with that at this point. There is a report that'll be coming forward at the same time as the zoning bylaw, looking at infill enforcement and some of the infractions that we're seeing in infill, and perhaps Ms. Petrin could add Kim could add some details to what's coming forward in that report. And that might be the better time to ask these questions and look at this holistically in terms of what are the barriers to infill in our community right now, and what the cost of additional enforcement mechanisms might be for trees, among other things that we're looking at as well. Kim?
Yes, the report in June of Urban Planning Committees around infill and construction impacts. I think one other comment I'd like to add is just, where we're growing as a city in terms of the policy direction of city plan and district planning, and the focus for infill and intensification. And so the development potential of a property from a single detached house currently is likely to increase to something greater. And so, there are still will be requirements in the zoning bylaw for landscaping. So we just need to be mindful of the flexibility that we need for supporting growth in our city.
Mm-hmm. Would that report in June also detail sort of the cost savings that have been that development community has probably received based off the numerous changes over the years? Because again, I think, I'm not going to deny that any type of requirement of a tree protection bylaw would require some cost, and yet I think it will be far outweighed by the numerous costs that have been saved over the last 7-8 years of changes within Edmonton's zoning bylaw and our permit changes, and the fantastic work of actually both of you around transforming how easy it is to do it. So getting a sense of the overall change, not just what one specific addition would do, but actually what all the other changes have helped benefit folks with.
Councillor Knack, no, the report will not have a detailed cost analysis looking at the benefits and the additions. What we do continue to hear from the infill builders is that it still is more expensive, more risky, different market segment to build infill in Edmonton. So we do still need to look at what are the things that we need to do to incent infill further in our city.
Okay, I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Councillor Rice?
Thank you. All my colleagues' questions really good, so some answered my questions already, and I'm going to start and focus on the infrastructure development, how it impacts our city's canopy and then the tree cutting as well. So my first question, and I just want to test my understanding is correct. The council approved land development, approved the infrastructure project implementation, but how many trees will be removed, will be cut, and that is operational decision actually specific from project team. So is my understanding correct?
So, Councillor, just to clarify, you're asking in a project if there's trees that need to be removed, what happens? How is the decision made? So
it's an operational decision.
So that's part of the project team's assessment. There is an environmental assessment, but perhaps if someone from IS is on the call, they can provide some detail.
I think I don't need the detail. I just want from high level, and then that question to be clear that is not council's vote to make decision to cut 200 trees or 300 trees or where we cut. So I just want to get that confirmation very clear, and I think I already heard the answer. Regarding to this, and what's the principle the city administration applied to determine when to cut the mature trees and how those trees to be determined to be cut? And then for me to ask this question, I really want to give the example for certain infrastructure projects when we council approved the original scope, and then the tree cutting and started. And however, later on the scope changed, but all the trees already cut, and we cannot move back and because it's already cut. And I really want to understand, have better understand what's the procedure, what's the process, and then for the project team to determine and when you cut the trees, how you cut the trees, and how that align with the project schedule.
Councillor Rice, it's Pascale Douceur from IIS. I feel like all of your questions would be well addressed with the next report about the Horlac Park process, and we will run through the EIA approval and all of the questions that you just raised.
That is not only about the park, and also related to the other infrastructure project, for example, LRT project as well.
No, understood. I just think that the conversation around Horlac Park will cover a lot of those general questions.
Okay, so because I do receive some questions in my inbox to ask certain, like why we cutting a tree even without, and we are not build anything there, and then so the tree already cut it, and we're gonna get it back, and if we plant a new tree, will take another 50 to 100 years, and at the same the tree we cut it. So that's my first two questions. The last question I have is about as the tree begin to mature and lose travel, and what risk analysis is the city doing and to mitigate potential issues for the sidewalks, drainages, and homeowners?
Councillor, we have urban foresters assigned throughout the city at a variety of infrastructure projects, including sidewalk and neighborhood renewals. They're working on making sure that when we're renewing sites and we're putting trees back in, that we're doing the best to put technology in that encourages tree roots to stay where they should be. Technologies including continuous drenching or silvocells like we discussed kind of encourage the tree root system to grow into the soil where it needs to be instead of under and being disruptive to sidewalks or other hard infrastructure. So there are, yeah, go ahead.
Also, homeowners, sorry, I have to be mindful of my time. Specifically for the drainage system and the homeowners, and because the tree sometimes is not the private tree and it's public trees. So if that's impact, is that working, and specifically we have the policy in place, we have procedure in place, and the public is aware of, and how to put in certain requests to fix those problems.
Yeah, typically, Councillor, it's a joint response between EPCOR and the city, and it is site by site. We need to assess the sites to check to see if it's a public or private tree infiltration issue. Factors like the age of the drainage infrastructure on private and public do come into play, but yeah, we do assign people, and if people phone into 311 or EPCOR, there's a standard process in place for answering those requests for service.
Okay, thank you. That's all my question.
Thank you very much. We are just mindful of our time, recognizing that we have some speakers. I know there's still speakers on the board, but we were discussing the potential of a requisition to council, which would allow us to continue this conversation on May 16th. So I will say requisition. Yeah, I mean, we can go to Councillor Salvador if you wanted to speak now instead of at council on May 16th. Or are you happy to wait to ask your questions then? Okay.
I was trying to remove myself from the list. I'm happy to wait.
Thank you.
Requisition.
Yeah.
Thank you. So just for all of our speakers who have been following the conversation, we've just requisitioned this report to council, so we'll be talking about it on May 16th at our council meeting. Thank you very much. That concludes our first item 7.1. We'll now go to item 7.2, to administration. We're hoping that we can hear from speakers today, so if your presentation is 5 minutes or less, that would be great.
Our presentation is more around 10 minutes, so depending on what committee wants to do with the report, we could definitely do it at the next opportunity. So I don't know if you're looking to...
Yeah, okay, well, let's go for it then. Oh, sorry, Councillor Rutherford?
I was going to say, I don't want to necessarily rush. So I wouldn't want them to cut their presentation down, and if it has to bleed into the next meeting, I'd prefer that. And also, before we adjourn, we need to deal with 7.4. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm hearing from you that there's not a time sensitivity to...
There's no time sensitivity on the report, so if committee wants to hear from the speakers and focus on that this morning, we're happy to keep the presentation for the following step, whatever that will be.
Okay, I just wonder about having speakers not be able to hear the presentation first.
We can try to run through quickly. So let's, okay.
Sure, sounds good, thank you.
Okay. So this morning, we wanted to review the environmental impact assessment process for the William Horlock Park rehabilitation and discuss the lessons learned. Next slide, please. The William Horlock Park rehabilitation project is within the regulatory framework of the North Saskatchewan River Valley Redevelopment Plan. This is Bylaw 7188, and we will refer to it as the River Valley Bylaw. The bylaw provides the standards and rules that guide our evaluation of individual projects and developments that are proposed for the River Valley. The Environmental Impact Assessment, or EIA, is a process to identify, predict, and evaluate the potential environmental effects of the project and ensure environmental stewardship throughout the duration of the project. This is done through the analysis of the current conditions in the project area, evaluation of risks, and identification of environmental impacts that must be eliminated, minimized, or mitigated through the design, landscaping, and construction measures. Next slide, thank you. The EIAs are done early in the design process to meet the requirements of the River Valley ARP, which requires council approval prior to committing funds for the capital expenditure of the construction work. As a result, the EIA, being early in the process, most River Valley ARP reviews include conditions that must be met and approved by administration as the project progresses. The conditions required can vary. Some conditions relate to construction and best practices. Others include reporting requirements or further review at detailed design. When subsequent information through reporting is required as a condition, any new impact must align with those identified in the original approved council-approved EIA. As presented, the EIA process occurs throughout the life of the project. It also involves multiple city areas working together who regulate, lead, or support the process. The regulatory authority is the Urban Growth and Open Space section, who oversees the city's environmental impact assessment process and coordinate reviews and administrative approval through all phases of the project. This section is part of urban planning and economy. The development of the EIA is led by Integrated Infrastructure Services as part of our responsibilities to designing and delivering the infrastructure project. Once completed, the EIA is submitted to Urban Growth and Open Spaces to coordinate a review by multiple city group, and we will talk a little bit more about those later in the presentation. The approval of the EIA is provided by City Council. The implementation of the EIA includes the conditions of approval. It is led by IIS, but supported by other city groups to ensure alignment with those conditions. These groups typically include forestry and natural areas operation and our Enviso teams. As you can see from this slide, each process around the William Horlock Park Rehabilitation Project in the EIA development was very thoroughly documented. So the EIA was prepared by Spencer Environmental Management Services. It's a company that acts as an external consultant that provides independent environmental management services. To date, they have provided services for over 900 projects. Their team is comprised of experienced environmental scientists, including professional biologists, certified professionals in erosion and sediment control, geographic information system specialists, and professional trains in ISO 1401 environmental management system, and auditing. To develop the EIA, there is a broad range of inputs with that direct many parts of the report, and they're included in the list that's visible here. Now, specific to trees, the EIA identified the loss of trees and native plant communities. It also identified the potential for incidental tree damage during the construction. And the EIA proposed mitigation measures to be done during detailed design and construction. At the time of the EIA development, the proposed open space tree removal shown by the concept design was considered to be indicative only, and a final tally of all open space trees to be removed would need to be produced once the final design was complete, incorporating the requirements and the conditions of the EIA. Following the EIA development, the review and approval process takes place. In the case of the Horlack Park project, it was approved by Council on April 4, 2022. In conjunction with the EIA, as required by the bylaw, a site location study was also completed and approved at the time. The EIA included several conditions that were related to trees. The first one being to complete the tree preservation plan. This includes critical details about the site conditions, work activities, and recommendations and actions that will take place on site prior to or during post-work activities to preserve city trees. This plan must be signed by a person with an approved professional designation, including but not limited to ISA certified arborist, a consulting arborist, a landscape architect, or a professional designation in a related field in forestry, horticulture, or agriculture. The second condition was to complete a restoration plan, and this includes a planting plan for direct revegetation of the site and specific plant types and locations, and finally, to update the tree removal inventory. The administration's review and approval process prior to council approval is an important step of the EIA. The process is both formal and thoughtful. First, IIS will submit all necessary documentation for review and approval by Urban Planning and Economy, and Urban Planning and Economy will manage the review process with city administration as well as key partners, which are listed on the slide. These include IPCOR, City Operations Department, the Community Services Department, our Legal Services, and Urban Planning and Economy. Next slide, please. So following the EIA approval, we move into implementation. During detailed design and in alignment with the conditions of our EIA approval, a tree preservation plan, a restoration plan, and an updated tree removal inventory were completed for the William Horlack Park rehabilitation. These documents have been submitted to Urban Planning and Economy for review and approval, and those reviews are ongoing, expected to be complete within May 2023. The documents are attached to the report and available now on the city website. An update to the EIA assessing implementation is also ongoing and will be submitted and reviewed in May, again, with Urban Planning and Economy. To align with the construction schedule, we have been doing some work concurrently so that early scopes of work were advanced for review and approval ahead of the remaining scope. Therefore, there is some work concurrently underway on the site related to tree management. This work has been reviewed and approved through a collaborative and open process between the project team and the regulatory body, and included site visits and consultation with all the experts hired on the project. Next slide. So for context, the tree preservation plan addresses both open space trees and natural area trees, which are defined differently. For open space trees, we can provide individual counts of trees. For natural areas, we delineate in terms of total areas. For the open space trees, there are 2,483 open space trees in the park. Of these, 741 are located within the 3 protection zone. This means that they are located within 5 meters of where any work is being conducted or within 5 meters of any boulevard. They are considered impacted because of their proximity to the work or the road, and they are all individually identified. To provide context, 5 meters is the length of a large SUV. Of those 741 trees within the protection area, 544 will be protected, which means that they will have fencing or other protective measures as outlined in the tree preservation plan. Of the remaining 197 open space trees, we estimate that 112 may need to be removed. We emphasize may, since some removals may be mitigated, but those decisions cannot be made until the work is ongoing. Furthermore, 85 trees have been identified as being impacted by grading and protection requirements. As field work progresses, we will better understand the outcome of these trees. All efforts are being made to protect as many as possible. However, in the event that no mitigation measures can be made of these 85 trees, they would be removed. The 85 is the worst case estimate, and we anticipate identifying measures to save as many of these trees. Earlier in the project, the number of trees to be removed was estimated to be higher. It was around 220. We anticipated the number would likely drop, and working through the strategies with our partners and the city teams, we continue to see the number go down as the project progresses. The plan also identified the commemorative trees. None of these trees are within the tree protection zone, and none will be impacted by the project. Finally, a final tree removal inventory will be prepared by the contractor in collaboration with the city once all of the tree removals are verified. As for the natural areas, we delineate in terms of total area, as I mentioned, not in individual trees. And so for this project, the natural area tree loss will occur on the margin of some of our natural tree stands throughout the park and 7 more restricted areas. These include things like the outfalls to the river and where the shared use path is routed next to the road on the west side. The sum of the total area of natural area disturbed is estimated at 1,512 square meters. And to give context, this is all combined into one area would be the size of one regulation NHL sheet of ice. During construction, the application of the EIA mitigation measures is ongoing, and the implementation of the tree preservation plan, the restoration plan, is underway. The project continues in the field collaboration between the contractor, urban forestry, the consultants to protect against any tree lost. To reiterate, this is an ongoing process and will continue throughout the project. Also important to note that the planting plan includes approximately 300 new open space trees and the restoration of the natural areas equal to what will be disturbed during the project. Finally, the lessons learned that have been identified throughout this process. Documenting and applying lessons learned is embedded in the city's project management requirements. This exercise is completed at key project milestones as part of the city's commitment to project management excellence and is an opportunity to learn, reflect, and improve. For the William Horlock Park Rehabilitation Project, some of the key learnings about the EIA and tree management included to provide information on tree removal once the preservation and restoration plans are finalized, to ensure clear communication about the entire EIA process and key milestones, to ensure an understanding of the process with the public and the stakeholders. Engaging our arborist early. While an arborist was involved early to complete surveyed inventory for this project, it would be very helpful to extend their services to include participating in early phases of design. In this role, the arborist can offer early input about mitigation options, and the potential for negative impacts could be further decreased. And finally, we would allow adequate scheduling for sequential tree preservation planning. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I'll now ask our speakers to come forward. So Dale Ladouceur, Rocky Farreau, if you're still there. Sherry Heschuk, were you able to join us? I see you on the meeting, but I'm not sure if you are able to participate. And Christine Kowalczyk.
Yep, I'm here.
Great. Thank you. So over to you, Ms. Ladouceur.
Yes, I am here.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Heschuk. We'll come to you in turn. Thank you.
All right. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you today. This certainly seems like, to quote another Canadian music icon, paving paradise to put up a parking lot. I really, to supplement my gig income, I was often taking contracts with different organizations and had a wonderful opportunity to be a best practice advisor. Now, if someone had come to me and said that, they were going to do something that was X number, and then they came to me after everything was all discussed and analyzed and said, well, actually, that number is going to be 3 times higher, I would not only have told them that, that's the opposite of best practice, but it looks like they don't know what they're doing, or they don't value both the importance of what they're doing or the impact of the other people's voices that were a part of the consultation. Large tree canopies are much stronger, and they protect seedlings, they protect young and moderate-sized trees. When you walk in Horlack Park, which I'm sure all of you have done, especially on a super hot day, we recently discovered that trees create their own weather. Especially like a stand of coniferous trees, the sapling, the microsap, can attract water droplets that create clouds, and to protect them for when it's a really, really hot day. That's why when you walk through a stand of coniferous trees, you can smell the green, you can smell the sap, because that process is happening. And there's other issues that I have with the whole, I'm glad you had a slide regarding lessons learned, but the lack of Indigenous consult was more than unfortunate, because Indigenous cultures value the role that trees, mature trees have. I'm not sure exactly whether it was covered already, but City Admin had to have known the actual number of trees that were considering being cut down. We just had learned, 220 plus trees were in danger. And then to learn from the Edmonton Journal that it was over 700 that were possibly in danger just due to above ground design changes. That is truly just unacceptable. And we need to, sorry, I'm having to stifle my emotionality around this, because I've been covering, as a writer and a journalist, I've been covering climate change, ozone depletion, and what all the changes that we're dealing with as of late. And I know that we have to consider, we can't look at the value of trees in the same way that we've always done, in either a monetary way, aesthetic way. We really need to look at them as lifelines to protect our ecosystem. And we really need to just rethink things, because the jump in the numbers, it doesn't show, it shows a lack of, well, I'm not sure whether it's a lack of planning or a lack of transparency. And Edmontonians really value Horlack Park. And not just the opportunity to gather for activities, but just to be able to disappear from the city and the urban rush, and just have that space and that peace of mind to be in and among the greenery. It's something that I'm so proud of when I say that I'm from Edmonton. And, I say we have more parkland and more bike trails than any other city in North America. And I really just want to suggest that we do not pave paradise and put up a parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Raquel Furrow, over to you.
Yeah. I was hoping that lessons learned would be a little bit more of a remorseful document but alas, it wasn't. I, I think it should have shown some remorse because I really, I read the environmental impact assessment that was FOIP'd. There's a lot of material to cover, but I think if one had been presented the Horlick Park Renewal Project, you would not have deemed it essential. I don't think you would have voted in favor. I know Councillor Jans was questioning the 134 million price tag and whether a true needs assessment had been done. But, you know, when I think you evaluate the project from climate goals and biodiversity goals, the project is a fail. So we're spending 134 million to take a step in the wrong direction, like more impermeable surfaces, more accommodation of a car culture, less trees, less natural area even. Yeah, just lost opportunities. So really, yeah, what a missed opportunity. I just think that it speaks again to changes. It sounds like council is working towards and wants to hear better environmental reporting from administration. And I think that could have happened. I think it could have been more clear. Like, I think council was basically told, you know, 10 to 15 trees might be affected. I just think if the true impact of this project, the increased loss of natural areas, increased runoff, impermeable surfaces, all the nature-based solutions that a park could provide, all of the benefits that our green space should provide, all of the pathway for opportunities in our energy transition strategy, all the, like, this is just the perfect place to find those intersections between climate adaptation and mitigation, and yet it didn't happen. It's just so sad. So I don't know what I'm hoping might come out of this meeting today, but just more resolve for better environmental reporting, more transparency in terms of, is this project meeting our climate goals and biodiversity goals? Because this project really is just adding gratuitous infrastructure and making our parks unaffordable. Instead of less infrastructure and more resiliency, we're getting more. And we can't keep up with our operating costs as it is. So how will we find that money in the future, let alone the 134 million that could have been going to address our climate crisis, our climate emergency, our housing crisis. I really hope something, I can't think of a solution, but I hope there's some resolve to get closer to our climate and biodiversity goals, that something that can come out of this discussion today. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Furrow. I'll just turn to Councillor Tang.
Yes, I'd like to just move to extend orders until 12:15.
Thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that's carried. Thank you. I'll now turn to Sherry Heschuk for your presentation. You'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Mayor and councillors, as well as those who've come to be in our spaces, and also that I wanted to take the opportunity to see whether or not we are providing current alternatives to how we want to address the tree management. I'm finding a few abilities or inabilities to really garner enough support to whether there is a construction company that can make these decisions on the part of how a tree will be managed. And I guess my consideration here is, if if by conserving biodiversity, we are hoping that this will save the trees, that will stop runoff and stagnant water in the public lands and is more sustainable. How are we addressing that when we are explaining that a tree will be removed or branches taken, or even the root system compromised, when we are supporting how this could possibly happen without some type of tree management? I realized that the information that we were given was as an effort to be more sustainable. But I think there's three community needs that I want to address formally. And the first one being there should be equity, and that's well researched when we talk about how our neighborhoods lack green spaces. I'm a paddler. I come across a lot of issues related to stabilization along the shoreline, and essentially that is a big prerequisite on the part of the rehabilitation. And I have a big concern about that, because the erosion has been happening en masse due to the fact that the trees aren't cared for in the way that they could be. And so that's a big issue, because we'll have more erosion along our river. Often these shelter belts will reduce pesticides drifts, and essentially that's a buffer for protection of our bats and our birds and our dragonflies. Secondly, we need to support biodiversity in every green space, and we've heard from the Urban Planning Committee that our river valley preservation is so important and that we need these alternative strategies for climate change. Although these references were made to alternative solutions within the city, an impact assessment was not made available and did not include strategies. This is creating environmental impacts, which brought the attention of our council and obviously our citizens who are here today. And thirdly, we need to protect natural living systems, obviously not the ones that we are compromising, and all environmental assets. We will practice wise environmental stewardship, and we will have a promotion of the health of the regional ecosystem, watersheds, environment, and sensitive areas. And just lastly, in order to prevent a heat island from occurring again, we need to highlight the activities of local communities and the opportunities to engage with everyone. One particular note is the citywide strategic level engagement, communications, and education. If that has been a program that we want to implement over the next 5 years to enhance how we will have a park that is viable and accessible and inclusive. And so I wanted to thank you again for allowing me to speak, and I do hope that we'll hear some information about how we are going to be good stewards and make these decisions for Edmontonians, and not just by a few people who know that they can take down a tree at any point without much recourse. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. And I'll go now to Christine Kowalchuk.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'm speaking on behalf of Edmonton River Valley Conservation Coalition. And we note that the lessons learned report today misses opportunities for improving city processes and acknowledging citizens' main concerns. Namely, 1, the lack of Indigenous consultation prior to a plan being decided for the park. 2, the lack of public engagement prior to a plan being decided for the park. 3, lack of proper environmental impact assessment process. And 4, an approach to the project as an infrastructure project rather than a parks project that works to increase nature-based solutions, decrease carbon emissions, and serve as a model for both green design and reconciliation in our city. As far as we know, Hawrelak Park has never been the subject of Indigenous consultation, even though it's the traditional land of the Papaschase and other Indigenous peoples. This project, therefore, had a major opportunity to correct that historic mistake. That did not happen. Lloyd Cardinal and I met with 3 members of Mayor Sohi's office in mid-March to talk about concerns with this project in relation to Indigenous consultation. We're still awaiting answers. It's troubling to read in this report that the lessons learned do not include the need for Indigenous consultation and are simply about providing information to people. Where is acknowledgement that there has to be an early step based on listening? It's not clear how this project reflects the city's Indigenous framework, which states its foundation in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which in turn commits to ensuring free, prior, and informed consent by Indigenous peoples on projects that affect them and their traditional land. Secondly, we're also concerned that the report does not acknowledge the need for early public engagement in relation to the environmental impact assessment. While we recognize that minor changes might be required as a project unfolds, it's alarming that this report suggests that it is standard for an EIA to be approved prior to final design, and that in this case, the failure of the EIA to account for the loss of over 100 trees and impacts to over 700 trees was not problematic. How are citizens to provide meaningful feedback on the project as per the city's environmental and engagement policies if they're not even aware of what the project entails? How is council itself supposed to approve an EIA if it is incomplete? If ERVCC had known about the planned tree removal when the EIA was released, we would have spoken against the project then. Instead, the public has had no opportunity to respond to the tree removal within the formal approval process. How does that meet the objectives of an EIA? Questionable interpretation of EIAs in the River Valley bylaw is now a pattern in our city, as we outlined in a letter to City Council last month. In this case, we would have hoped to have seen the lessons learned include the need for early public engagement regarding the vision for the park and a complete EIA submitted for approval. Finally, we see no acknowledgement of the missed opportunity for this project to actually align with city goals and demonstrate truly sustainable thinking. Why did the project assume, as noted in the report on page 2, existing park goals and objectives? An urban planning friend has told the RVCC that in any other city, a $134 million parks project would have led to an international design competition, with constraints included such as tree preservation, decreased impermeable surfaces, decreased carbon footprint, decreased light pollution, sustainable transportation, and Indigenous-led design. Instead, this project was simply assigned as an infrastructure project to a construction company with the assumption that it's necessary to replace all the infrastructure put into place 60 years ago when there was no concept of a climate and biodiversity crisis, and indeed it adds increased impacts. How is this greener as we grow? This project presented such an opportunity for a rethinking of the entire park to make it a model in sustainability and reconciliation. Instead, it makes things worse. And the short-sightedness of the approach is obvious. How will the parking lots ever accommodate 2 million people? Will all the replanted trees have to be dug up in another 60 years to replace the infrastructure again? We cannot afford to make such an expensive mistake, which will furthermore create increased ongoing maintenance costs. One is tempted to think this whole project is purposely intended to be unaffordable so that a case is made for private operations. We encourage City Council to halt the project and require a new start that begins with Indigenous consultation. We remind you that in the 1970s, City Council halted the Metropolitan Freeway Plan 10 years after it was begun, and McKinnon Ravine had been cleared, storm sewers constructed, and $1 million spent. As Mayor Dent said at the time, it is unfortunate to head down the wrong path. It's more unfortunate to continue down that path. Thankfully, City Council had the wisdom then and the courage then to change course. We're looking to you to show that same wisdom and courage today. Thank you.
Thank you. I know I'm just going to turn to see if any of my colleagues had questions of our speakers. I know you've raised points that I'll certainly be directing towards our administration when we pick this report up again at a later time. But not seeing any.
I just quickly,
Sohi, yeah.
I just for Christine, just want to make sure that we are on the same page as for communication from my office. I understand that you and Lloyd met with my staff, and a number of questions were raised related to this information, and we forward some of those answers to you and Lloyd. But you then you raised further questions on which we are waiting some information. So you haven't received the earlier email. We'll make sure that we forward that to you.
Okay, we didn't actually receive any answers to our previous questions either.
Okay.
So just to let you know about that.
Yeah, so what I've been told that your questions were raised with administration, then IRO, Indigenous Relations Office, met with Elder Barry as well, right? And then the questions were answered, but we'll just make sure that you get the answers. Just want to make sure that the record was clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi. So again, thank you to our speakers. We'll be following up this thread at our next Urban Planning Committee meeting. If I turn to my colleague, Councillor Rutherford.
Yes, thank you. I would like to move that the May 2nd, 2023 Integrated Infrastructure Services Report IIS 01731 be postponed to the June 1st, 2023 Urban Planning Committee meeting.
Thank you. Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that's carried. Thank you all very much. I'll go now to Councillor Rutherford for a motion on we will now go to item 7.4. I don't believe we need a presentation and that Councillor Rutherford is prepared to move the recommendation. I'll just confirm if any of my other colleagues have questions or want to sign in. No? Okay. Councillor Rutherford, over to you.
And I recommend that, or I move that Urban Planning Committee recommend to City Council that bylaw 20451 be given the appropriate readings. I'd just like to speak to that quickly.
Yes, thank you. Please go ahead.
Just to say, I know I pulled this. I didn't get a chance because of the short day today, so I would appreciate if administration could follow up with me afterwards on my specific questions to Calder. Otherwise, I will end up pulling this again at council. Thank you.
We'll be happy to.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate everyone working within our time constraints today. So with that, we will go for a vote, please, on the motion to approve the recommendations and this to be given appropriate readings at council.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. And that's carried. Thank you. I believe we are just at notices of motions or motions without customary notice. Are there any? No? Okay. Well, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for this very whirlwind half-day meeting. Thank you.